Toodles melted under her attention, practically swooning. "What you doing here, the Wendy?" Cubby asked, displaying a set of teeth pocked by the occasional absent baby teeth. I'm here because, well, any internal struggle she had about confessing her use of Peter's shadow and handing it over to the pirates was immediately cut short as Tinker Bell drove in, literally and figuratively bouncing up and down and angrily shredding Sparkles as she obviously told what she thought was a tale of betrayal and near murder. Slightly nodded and said, "Uh-huh," madly understanding everything the fairy just jingled. "Oh, so that's what happened to his shadow," was all he said when she finished. Then he clapped contemplatively on a giant mushroom chair that bowed a little under his weight. Wendy tried to stave off her anxiety while waiting for his reaction, conclusion, or decision by running her hands through Toodles' wispy hair. Meanwhile, Skipper kept staring at her unblinkingly, either in awe or in disgust. "But wait," Slightly finally said, frowning. "There's one part of your story I didn't get, Tink. His shadow was in London the whole time, and he never thought to look there?" Why would he? The fairy began to back away and sway forth in the air, her face twisting like a child's between contrived innocence and a brow furrowed deep in thought, as though she desperately tried to come up with a better answer. "Oh, Tink," Slightly said, shaking his head. "Did you keep him from getting it back? Were you jealous of the Wendy?" "It's just Wendy," Wendy corrected, unable to stop herself even as she processed this new information. She looked at the fairy in shock. That pretty thing had been jealous of Wendy? A plain, boring London girl with her brothers in a nursery inventing tales of a world more wonderful than their own? Tinkerbell had Peter Pan himself. All Wendy had were stories in his shadow, and the fairy was jealous? But why? He slightly pressed, echoing Wendy's thoughts precisely. The fairy looked taken aback by this honest question. Then she stuck her tongue out at Wendy, put her hands on her hips, and turned away, fluttering her wings provokingly and buzzing. Skipper shook his head in acute disgust. "She says it's stupid the way he always made her go to London and sit her outside your window," Slightly translated, "and then forced her to listen to you, the ugly Wendy, tell a long and boring story is about her friend." "Oh dear," Wendy said, unable to think of anything else. "That's Tink," the fox boy said with a sigh. "No one gets between her and Peter." "But I wasn't. I didn't. I couldn't even..." Don't worry about it. She'll come around," Cubby said, rolling his eyes. "Girls. Oh, there's so much I must wake up for in Neverland. And I haven't been here a day," Wendy cried. "Standing with you lost boys. Slightly, I am deeply sorry for what I've done. Trading in Peter Pan's shadow for passage to Neverland was a base, cowardly thing to do." "What?" Slightly and all the other lost boys looked at her in surprise. "Well, you're sorry. Wasn't no other way you could get here. Grown-ups ain't allowed. Pretty clever, really. Besides, pirates, you know. Hook was the one that tricked you. They're the bad guys. They're always screaming to get Peter." "So you forgive me?" Wendy asked timidly. "I guess if Peter's got to do that, you should probably talk to him," Slightly said, but he seemed uncomfortable saying it. He looked over at Skipper, who looked away. What's going on?" Wendy demanded. "Something's going on. You're not telling me." "It ain't nothing," Skipper said. "It's just that no one's really talked to Peter since he lost his shadow," the twins said. "He's been real ornery. Gotten worse lately," Cubby said, rolling his eyes. "No fun at all. Him and Slightly been going at it." "Going at it?" Wendy asked in shock. "You've been fighting with Peter Pan, your leader?" "Peter said it was time for Slightly to get out of Neverland." Because he was growing up, the twin said quietly. The rest of the boys looked embarrassed, like it was something they would rather die than reveal to an outsider. Slightly frowned and worked his jaw, wrapping his fingers on a table in nervous anger. Aye, he did. He said I was growing up and there weren't no place for me anymore. But that's unheard of. No one gets kicked out of the Lost Boys. Why did he say that? Was it anything you did at all? The fox boy shifted in his chair and then suddenly leapt up, going out the window. I was just getting sick of it, you know? I've been here the longest, done it all. Go hunting, talk to the mermaids, battle the pirates. Raided by the Licky. Tease the Cyclops. It's always the same things. He began to miss things, Cubby whispered, like it was too awful to mention it loud. He thinks he can remember his mother. He misses beds and hard things and nurses and being indoors all the time, the twin said in disgust. I don't ever, Slightly swore, spinning around. I don't want any of those things. I just want different things. New things, all right, and maybe a bed. So what's wrong with that? I have some ideas about things we could do, and Peter just laughed at them. You look like a mother, Toodles ventured, tucking on Wendy's skirt. The Lost Boys looked at him in surprise. Oh, I thank you, darling, Wendy said, scooping him up, reminding herself to wash her hands thoroughly as soon as she had a chance. The skunk boy snuggled into her soft chest. So because of this, he threatened to throw you out? Peter don't like change, Slightly said, scowling. Anything different, unless it's a newer, better game than he thought of, is growing up, and bad, so I'm bad, and I'm growing up, so I have to do. And do all of you agree? Wendy asked, shifting Toodles onto her hip so she could turn and look at each one of the boys in the eye. None of them met that look. No, Skippers finally said, eyes to the ground. We love Slightly, Toodles murmured. He's all we got when Peter's not around, Cubby said. He's a good leader, the twins said. Well, I don't suppose it's entirely up to Peter Pan then, is it? Wendy said. Is he the king of Neverland? No, no one is, Slightly swore. That's the whole point, right? No growing up and no rules and whatever you want and fun all the time. If you want fun, he said thoughtfully. I don't always want fun, and don't freedom mean you get to do what you want at least sometimes? Absolutely correct. Well, all right, then you will stay so if you desire, Wendy said, carefully putting Toodles back now. That's sorted. No one is the boss of you here. That's it? Cubby asked surprised. Wendy nodded. Why not? It's Neverland. Do as thou wilt. Isn't that the whole of the law here? Huh? Skipper said thoughtfully. I don't think it's quite that simple, Slightly said. At least not between Peter and me. Well, I don't think there's much fun I can do here. The two of you will need to work out on your own, just as I need to apologize to him and myself. Tinkerbell and I are actually trying to help Peter and help him get his shadow back, which may ameliorate his mood a bit and tone down the tension in your little tete-a-tete. Ameliorate what? Teta what? You memorize a dictionary or something? Slightly scoffed, waving his hand at her. Who would want to go back to London? Who indeed, Wendy said dryly. But listen, because having Peter's shadow, Hook has something always terrible up his sleeve in all of Neverland. Deadly, rather permanent, as he said. What? Like destroying all of Neverland? Skipper asked. Tinkerbell nodded. But why? Slightly demanded. I have some theories, Wendy said, but I don't think it's mostly because he's mad. Anyway, we need to stop him, and I don't think we could defeat the pirates on our own. Just the three of us, me and Tinkerbell and Peter, even with Peter reunited with his shadow. Can we count on you? The fairy rolled her eyes and turned her head away with a stiff. Of course, Slightly said, sticking out his chin. Whatever my beef with Peter is, a man needs his shadow. Of course we'll go with him and get pirates and save Neverland. That's the spirit, Slightly, Cubby cried. Well, we'll show those stupid pirates. And that stupid Captain Hook, the twins crowed. Wonderful, Wendy said warmly. Everything was coming together. She had met the Lost Boys, rallied them to her cause, and now they would come with her. And of course the fairy, Tinkerbell, couldn't object. It would be trying to resist a cheery force of nature, a goodwill waterfall, once they decide to come along. So where do you think Peter is? Sometimes when he's down, he goes to the Mermaid Lagoon, Hubby said, rolling his eyes. Talks with the fish girls. I'd like to try first, Slightly said, nodding. Wendy tried to quell the quick thumping in her heart. Mermaids? First she got to see the fairy, who admittedly was much more hostile than she had imagined. Wendy was working on that. And now mermaids with glittering scales and flowing hair. Everything was turning out so wonderfully. All right, lead the way, she cried. Oh, well, you go ahead, Slightly suggested. We'll just wait on you till you bring him up to speed. Once you talk to him about what you did, and where his shadow is, and give him some time to, react to that. He might be angry, Cubby said, nodding. Or very happy, one of the twins said. Too very happy, the other one added. He might go flying off and go by himself, Skipper mumbled. Or fly off the handle, right at you, or Tink, or Slightly even. The fox boy nodded. I don't know how he'll be able to take all this news. You tell him, let him work out for a bit. I don't want him to take nothing out on me if he ain't got his head on straight. He's sore enough as it is. But together we can convince him or argue with him. Are we ready to go immediately to the pirates? Wendy said desperately. Power in numbers. Do as thou wilt, Slightly quoted back at her. We will not. Not until Peter's all right with all of this and all of us. All of this sounds like a terrible idea, Wendy said forlornly. But the little fairy smiled, looking more than a touch smug. And that's the end of that chapter. See you later.